Hi, great to see you all here. What I'm going to talk today is about Crowdreporter and the lessons that we learned. Crowdreporter is the biggest crowdfunding project in Germany to date. But what I find even more interesting is that it's part of a bigger story of a bigger movement, of a European crowdfunding movement that is really, especially in the last months, booming. And I think that's amazing. But it actually went a long way, and part of that story I want to tell today. There are two ways to ask questions. The one is just raise your hand, and you will get a mic, and you can ask the question anytime. The other is to use the hashtag IGFCrowd. It actually, I misspelled it here, so it's IGFCrowd, like the crowds. And I will check all the questions that you send using this hashtag afterwards and then reply to you on Twitter. All right, then let's get going. And I'll start off with a question. Do you know who this guy is, or who knows who this guy is? No one? Maybe? No? Okay, this guy is called David Kohn, and he's sort of the father of crowdfunding journalism. He started a platform called Spot.us, or US, and that was way back in 2008. And even though it was the first crowdfunding platform in journalism, it already was sort of a success. It funded hundreds of smaller projects, acquired a funding of several $100,000, I think even millions of dollars. And in 2011, it was acquired by American Public Media. American Public Media didn't really know what to do with Spot.us, and it kind of went down traffic-wise when David Kohn left to start his next project. He started Circa. I don't know if you know that. It's an app that is kind of like showing you, enables you to follow up news events with very short summaries. So when David left, it seemed also the kind of like corporate culture went down, the motivation went down, the momentum was lost. So in 2014, American Public Media decided to put it on hiatus. So it kind of like stopped operating and was shut down for good in 2015. And that I think is fascinating, because at a time where we see like a boom in crowdfunding and journalism in Europe, we see that the kind of like pioneer in America shut down. But there's an upside to that, because the company who shut it down, they also published a playbook. And if you want to dig deeper into that, you can search for Spot.us crowdfunding playbook, and you'll find a very, very fascinating and comprehensive report on the reasons why Spot.us didn't work out after all. And some of the findings I quickly summarized here. So what makes crowdfunding in general successful is that all those big platforms, they manage to raise a crowd themselves. And this crowd is growing and growing and growing. And all the new projects that are placed on those platforms, they profit from this growing crowd. So if you look at Kickstarter, which is one of the biggest crowdfunding platforms, they have millions of people that they reach. So the projects that are published or putting their projects now on Kickstarter, they can profit from this huge crowd. This, it seems, didn't work really well in journalism. So the crowd on Spot.us was not really growing, because like the people who funded the journalism, they did not come back to fund the next piece of journalism. So they were basically just friends and family, to the biggest part, who were supporting their kind of peers, their friends, their colleagues, but they were not really interesting to like repeatedly fund journalistic projects. That was one reason. The crowdfunding journalism market is tiny in America, at least. It's like 0.13% of the whole crowdfunding market. And it has a higher failure rate, 63% compared to 56%. 56 is the average of all crowdfunding projects. And the problem with the projects that were actually successfully funded was that they could not really scale and sustain their business. So it was basically just one-offs. Even the successful projects, they like finished their project, but then afterwards they basically were at the same situation where they left for the next project, they again didn't have fundings. They again had to go through the whole process. So that also was a big bummer. All of this is, and that's very important, is only true for America and only true for the point in time of this analysis. Because what I will repeat all the time, and I hope I'm not boring you, but I think that's a very important lesson you should take away from this, is that especially at this point in time in journalism, there are no rules. There are just assumptions, and those assumptions have to be tested and tested all over again. And sometimes you will find that assumptions that were true yesterday are not true today. And I think crowdfunding is a very good example for that, because Spot.us and crowdfunding in journalism at the moment in America does not seem to work, but you can't make a rule out of it, because at the same time you see we test the same assumptions and we experience it works very well. All right, some of the learnings out of that report is also something that you should take away and should memorize and maybe make a photo and think about it, because it's crucial. It's one of the most important things when it comes to crowdfunding. That's the whole point of planning. So you have, before you do anything, you should really take your time and plan what do we actually want to achieve, on what infrastructure, with what means, and with whom. Like, who are your people you want to work with, who are your colleagues, who is the target audience, and what's your mission? Why do you think whatever you want to get funded is so important that you can ask for the money of the people? And 90 days sounds like a lot of time, but actually if you start from scratch, that's nothing. So really keep that in mind, like take a long time of planning before you actually start anything in terms of crowdfunding. The next step, once you're sure you know who you work with, you know what kind of money you want to raise, you know what kind of platforms you want to use, you reach the step of pre-promotion. What you do in pre-promotion is you really set out a plan. What do you do once the campaign starts? So you really make a plan and say, on day one, that's what we want to do. That's what we do on Facebook. That's what that's the press release. On day two, what do we do? We I don't know, publish some photos of the new newsroom. We publish some, or we introduce some of the editors. So you really have to basically atomize your whole campaign into small pieces of content and put them in a spreadsheet and plan every day really carefully. Another really important thing that's crucial for the success of your campaign, and that also eats a lot of time, is the video. I mean, nowadays you heard that, like, I guess here and before, and you hear it everywhere. Video is everything nowadays, and it's for sure true for crowdfunding. So a lot of the people, they won't really read through all the things that you like planned out in those 90 days and that you like put down in text very carefully and thought through. They will just look 2 minutes of video and that's it. And if you don't manage to convince them within those 2 minutes, you maybe not lost all of them, but you definitely lose a lot of the people. Yeah, and then you end up with the campaign itself. And the campaign is between 2 weeks and they say 30 days, but I think you can even make it 6 weeks. That depends on you. The reason why it's not 2 months or 3 months or like even longer is that you really want to create this immediacy. You want to, like, I mean, there are actually several reasons. The one reason is that a campaign is extremely tiring. Like, it is a full-time job for everyone involved during the whole campaign. So you can't really underestimate how stressful it is to be in this campaign, and you really want to keep this very stressful period as short as possible. The next thing is that if you don't create this momentum and this feeling of immediacy, you will lose a lot of people because they think, they will see it at some point and they think, yeah, well, okay, I'm going to see how this goes, and then maybe I come back like a couple of days later, and then they never come back. So you really have give the people this feeling that if they want to support you, have to support you now, because it's like only this short and they have to decide now. And you still have to keep most of the people come back and come back again. Like, there are only very, very small amount of people that donate the first time they hear of your project. On the other hand, 2 weeks I think is a bit short, because after all you still want to have some time to, like I said, like address the people repeatedly, get the message out, reach a lot of people, and that takes time. You can't do that like within 1 week. And after a successful campaign, you have the production and follow-up period, and that's the time where you actually have to keep your promise. Whatever you promised your crowd, that's the time where you have to keep up with the promise. And like half a year sounds like a lot of time, but it's not. So those 180 days, you should already like factor in the 90 days in the first kind of step. You really, in the first step, already have to think about, once we succeed, is it actually feasible to like fulfill whatever we promised in the period afterwards with the means that we ask for. All right, so you say in Germany usually that we are lagging behind the US 5 years, and that's true in many respects, and it also is true when it comes to crowdfunding for journalism, because like I said, in 2008 Spot Us was founded, and in 2013 we followed, like the German project followed with Krautreporter. So that's what a lot of people don't know. Crowdreporter didn't start as a magazine, but Crowdreporter started as a crowdfunding platform itself. So we were really the kind of like German Spot Us. Yeah, and that's how it looked back then in 2003. That's basically how all the crowdfunding websites look like. You have an overview of the different projects. You see how much was donated already, how many days are left, and then if you click on those projects, you see what kind of like benefits you get if you donate a certain amount. You get more details, and you can get in touch with the founders and get some like the whole communication package around it. Crowdreporter also was a success. It was like Spot Us was the first attempt in that field, and it worked out okay. So 46 projects were successfully funded by 5,000 paying members or paying users, and in total 200,000 euros were raised and were used for independent journalism, and the success rate was 70%, so it was way higher than Spot.us. And it will be relaunching in 2015 with a different name. Write that down, and I will tell you more about that later on in the presentation. The lessons learned at Crowdreporter, but I think it also holds true for Spot.us, is that there's not really a sustainable business model for the crowdfunding platforms themselves. So what you usually do as a crowdfunding platform, you get a small sort of handling fee between 5 and 10%. So Crowdreporter was taking 5% of the whole sum that was donated to the project. And like 9%, 10% is the kind of limit. Like if you go beyond that, then you will have the huge problem that a lot of people think like, I want to support this project, but 1 out of or 2 out of $10 goes into the platform. That doesn't make sense for me. So you have to keep that margin really, really small. But that actually is really a problem for the platform, because 5%, like out of 100,000 euros, for example, it's just not enough to maintain the whole infrastructure, to maintain a team. And like we heard before, the market is very, very small, so there's not a lot of hope that you can scale and become big in year 2 or 3 or 4. Like you will grow, but you will never grow fast enough to kind of maintain a proper team and a proper development team that is also like updating and improving your software. So that's a big problem for crowdfunding platforms. The next problem is for the projects, that it's actually in many cases, it's not satisfying, the outcome, because everyone who's doing crowdfunding is underestimating the time it takes to successfully pull this off. Like the amount of communication you have to invest is just insane. One mistake a lot of first-time crowdfunders doing, they just look at the crowdfunding campaign itself. They just look at the 30 days, for example. But they're not looking into the preparation time. They're not looking into the time afterwards, where you also have to invest a lot of time in like communicating and updating the people who enabled that. And then also for the rest of the lifetime of every project that was crowdfunded, you have this overhead of communication, because the people who are like asking you questions and who want to get answers from you, they're not anyone. They're the people who enabled you to be there. So you can't really, I mean, not obviously you don't want to ignore them anyway, but I mean, in crowdfunding, particularly, you just can't ignore them because that is really like a huge publicity fuck up. I mean, you really have to bear that in mind. Like once you tap into a crowd, the crowd sticks with you for the rest of the lifetime of a project and is causing a sort of overhead. So that's what a lot of journalists kind of underestimated, and that was a huge problem because they calculated in a way that it was just enough to fund the project, and then afterwards they went back to their normal lives, and they still had to use time that they didn't get paid for in any way. And so that's what a lot of projects actually found very frustrating, and you really have to keep that in mind if you want to use crowdfunding for your own journalistic project. And the next project, the next problem is that very few of those projects scale and sustain. So usually you just get, for example, enough money to do a research trip, and you do the research trip, and then you publish it, and that's it. And that's quite a lot of work for this amount of outcome. But this is changing, and that's also something that I find fascinating, and that I'm going to talk more about it yesterday, because you can see that that's a learning that a lot of people understood, and now they're not running just for a small project, but they really run for enough funding to sustain a whole newsroom operating for a year or even longer. And I think that's the way to go. The next big step in this kind of like story of crowdfunding and journalism is DeCorrespondent. Rob Weinberg, one of the founders, he's here as well. I think you can hear him talk tomorrow in the morning in a panel. And I can just recommend you, if you're interested in this topic, grab him and have an espresso with him, because I think he's a really inspiring and smart guy, and the Correspondent definitely did many things extremely well. So there's a lot to learn from. So Rob Weinberg actually went to Sebastian Esser, the founder of Krautreporter, already early in 2013, and asked him about this plan to not. So he followed like what Krautreporter did, all those like small projects and how that worked, and he said, so okay, we actually have a bigger plan. We want to like fund a whole newsroom, a whole media organization with crowdfunding. Do you think that's possible? And like I said, I mean here. That's kind of like the lessons that we learned from Krautreporter, the crowdfunding platform for journalistic projects. So it didn't really seem likely that you could raise over $1 million with crowdfunding for journalism. So Sebastian actually at that point said like, well, I mean, good luck with that, but I don't think that will work. Like usually you get like, I don't know, at the most 20,000, 30,000, but $1 million, that hasn't been done before. But the Correspondent actually pulled this off. They raised $1.7 million in just 1 week. It was founded in 2013 by Rob Weinberg and Jan Faut. And what I think is also spectacular is that they had a growth rate of 50%. So what I told you before, usually crowdfunding projects, they don't scale. The Correspondent did. They grew 50% within a year. It grew from 19,000 subscribers to 28,000 subscribers, and that in a small country like the Netherlands. I mean, that's really impressive, I think. One of the innovations they implemented, and I can recommend you to look into that, because I think that's like one of the most fascinating endeavors when it comes to paid content. They introduced a so-called social paywall. What does that mean? That means that usually if you are not supporting the Correspondent, if you're not paying money and you go on the website, you won't see any content. But if you go on Twitter, if you go on Facebook, and click on a link, you will see that content. But you will see it in a slightly different way, because, so for example, I'm a member of the Correspondent and I share a link on Twitter, and you click on it, then what you will see is the content and a small note saying, you can only see this content because me, Frederik, paid for that. So you get this feeling that this is not for free, like someone paid for this and it's not you. So you're basically like, yeah, you can just read this because I paid, and that makes you feel a bit bad, maybe. And I think that's a very smart way, because it's not cutting down the traffic. I mean, everyone who wants to read you still can read you, but it clearly also signals and communicates like content, really good content, quality content is not for free. Someone has to pay for it, and people are actually paying for it. And if you want to support this, you better do that as well. And the next thing that I found extremely inspiring is that they perceive journalists as conversation leaders and not as the like Mr. or Mrs. Know-it-alls. So for the correspondent reporters, it's not enough anymore that you're really outstanding. Like I don't know, like you're just the expert on all things military, on all things food, whatever. And then you like write all your brilliant thoughts in a comment and publish a comment and end of story, and you go on to the next. What they really want to do is spark a conversation with the audience, because the audience, like I said before, they enabled the whole project in crowdfunding. So you really want to show them that they're part of this and give them like the opportunity to get involved. And so when the Correspondent were looking for their journalists, they were looking for people who understood this and really were looking forward to enter this conversation with the crowd and with the audience. And I think they collected a real great bunch of journalists, so it works really well for them. Okay, why was it so successful? First of all, also here, if you want to dig deeper and hear it like from the original source, check out pfaut.com, because this is the blog of one of the founders, and he is documenting the whole story of the Correspondent and all the learnings and all the problems as well on this blog very carefully. And he's very open also of the things that don't work and that they do wrong. So I think that's really outstanding. It's great that he's doing that, and there's definitely a lot to learn from his blog. So I can really recommend it. And then there's also the Correspondent on medium.com, where they publish a selection of their articles also in English. So even if you don't speak Dutch, you can just go on medium.com and read some of the articles. And also there they share some of their learnings. Okay, so one of the reasons why the Correspondent was so successful is that the founders were like small stars. They were already like they were renowned journalists. They published a book. They were repeatedly on television shows, and also on the television show they announced that they want to start this. So that was a huge like a head start for the whole project, because it was basically the biggest talk show in Dutch television. So more or less the whole nation, not the whole nation, but yeah, a lot of Dutch people were watching it, and then the next day was just like talk of the town. Everyone was talking about it, and that's also something that you should take away. The start is really the key. Like when you go on the planning of your project, the most important day is the first day, because if you can manage that on day 2 at the latest, everyone is talking about you. Everyone on Twitter, on Facebook, the newscast, all the newspapers. Then you kind of like almost there more or less, because then that creates a momentum that is really helping you a lot, because you're a news story at this point then. Like people, if they like you, if they don't like you, if they think this is a brilliant idea, if they think it's a stupid idea, I mean, we all know how journalism works. At the moment it's a topic, people will cover it. And reach is crucial in crowdfunding. So yeah, popularity helps for sure. Another thing is that the bigger the pain, the better it is for you as a project. What I mean with this is that like you have to be aware that you're actually solving a problem for the people out there, for your audience. If you are trying to do crowdfunding or establish a kind of like alternative media in an ecosystem that is working very well, and no one is actually like needing an alternative, there is no pain in the audience, so why should they fund you? On the other hand, and that's like the case in the Netherlands, there is not that much of alternative left. I mean, the Netherlands is struck by a media crisis like all the other countries, but I mean, you can really feel the impact when a newsroom closes down way more than in Germany, for example, where we still have like 3 big national newspapers. So even if one closes down, I mean, you can definitely feel it, and it's bad, but you still have 2 others. So that was a big help for them, and something I think also you could take away of, that you really have to be careful, like in which kind of news environment you place this. And like I said, like the bigger the need, the better it is for you. And like with Direct 63, like I talk about that later, it's a Hungarian crowdfunding project. I mean, there you can also clearly see that everyone understands the need that there has to be an alternative, because in Hungary there is no free media anymore. So that's a very good example of kind of understand, is there a pain, like is there a need for what you have to offer. Yeah, the social paywall works very well, and what I think is also what they did extremely well, and Germans usually have a problem with that, and Americans are usually excellent with that. That's storytelling. The Dutch just did an amazing job in storytelling. So it was not just like we had this idea and we like thought about maybe starting this new newsroom, and maybe you want to give us your money, and then we see what happens with it. But they really had this clear vision of like, this is going wrong, like journalism is really going through a huge crisis, you all feel it, you all are affected by it, here's how we want to improve it. We all want to make you part of that conversation if you fund us. You're not any longer like a passive consumer, but you're an active part of our journalism community. So they enabled everyone who was willing to pay $60 to be part of the project. And they like explained that story and then narrated that story in a very fascinating and convincing way, though. So there's a lot to learn from. All right, so that's what we then tried to do as well. After we saw how amazing the Correspondent was going, Sebastian also said, okay, like there's no way, if they can pull this off in the Netherlands, like a country that's like a fourth of the German population, there's no way we shouldn't do this in Germany as well. And obviously, Sebastian, having all this experience, was the number one guy to do this. If anyone, then he. And so we did this. And as you can see in the screenshots, like it worked, like reach-wise, it worked very well. Like we were on the main newscasts, we were on all the big newspapers, everyone was writing about. And like I said before, even if they liked us or not, we were a topic and they were covering us. But on the other hand, up to today, that also is a kind of like curse, because we are under like such a scrutiny that whatever we do, people are observing it. And as we are in Germany, we're not like we're just like a nation of critics. Like everyone's criticizing everyone else. It's not like in America where like kind of try to be more supportive of new ideas. So it like the higher your exposure, your media exposure, also the bigger your kind of like observation afterwards is. And during the campaign, it helps a lot. After the campaign, to be honest, you wish that they would all just go away and let you work, but that's just not how it works. Okay, that's how the crowdfunding website looked like, and that's, to be honest, something that I would not recommend you to. It's a small visual trick, but I think it's something that we did wrong, and I would recommend you to do that different. You see this huge kind of bar, this gray bar? It looks very frightening in the beginning, right? It looks like you can never reach the goal. And so what other platforms are doing, and I think that's the better way to do it, is they also have this bar, but the goal of the bar is something that is reached very quickly. So they say, for example, I don't know, you want to reach 1 million, but they say, okay, let's make them start with 25,000. So it's like an auction. Who gives 25,000? Let me hear 25,000. And once it's 25,000, it's like, yay, we did it. And then it jumps back, and then it's like a little bit further, and it's for the next 25,000. So you always have this feeling that, wow, this is amazing, it's going on, and it's almost there, and I want to be the one who's like giving the last $60 to make this a success, and then it's jumping back, and the game starts again from day one. It is a bit of a trick. I mean, you communicate that. It's not that you kind of like try to hide this, but obviously it's a trick. But I think it's legitimate, and it definitely has a huge impact. And this for sure was a huge problem for us, because it just looked like we will never get there. And that's also what a lot of people then jumped on and tried to visualize. Lorenz Matzert, he's one of the most famous data journalists in Germany. He immediately threw out a graphics and analyzed how much new subscribers we need every day during the campaign and how much we actually got. And as you can see, the first day, like usually, is the best day. So we were way above the average. But then afterwards, it really quickly lost its momentum. And already on day 4, we were way below the average amount of new subscribers that we needed. And that was, and that's actually we knew that this was happening. Like that's the normal kind of crowdfunding phases that you go through. You start with like a bombastic first phase if everything goes well. Then in the so if you have 4 weeks, into week 2 and 3, it kind of slows down. That's called the so-called Valley of Death. And then in the last week, it really picks up momentum again because the people then really want to make it happen. So basically, the time in between in this Valley of Death, the only thing you can really do is just like keep relevant and just like repeatedly address the people. So the people realize you're there, you're making progress, you're good people, you really try hard, you work hard, this is good. And then at the end, they don't want to make this a failure, and then they promote and donate. We already hit this kind of Valley of Death on day 4, which was way earlier than we expected, and it was dangerously early, to be honest. And you can see that also in another graphic that was published on the day where we actually succeeded. And here you can see that, like, we started off phenomenally in the first few days, and then basically no growth whatsoever up until the very last days, and then it just exploded. And the reason for that was that I think there are actually several reasons, but one of the reasons also is that we didn't really had something to offer at this point. Like, I mean, traditional crowdfunding, at the end you get something. You get shares in a company when it's crowd investing. You get like products. You get something in return. And in this case, like, we basically just asked for the people to make it happen, but they didn't really know what they get in return. So I think that was a tricky bit. And also, to be honest, we got a lot of like bad publicity as well. So a lot of people didn't actually know, like, why should I fund them? Like, this is a weird project, and I don't know where they are going. So it was really difficult. But I think it still should there's a positive message, and we did a lot of things wrong, and just in the project itself, even the stuff that is typical for crowdfunding and that's not up to our mistakes. It made it really hard, but nevertheless, it was a success. Like, we raised 1 million euros. So I think that's the kind of positive message that's out there. I mean, everyone can do this. I mean, we definitely did not a perfect campaign, and we managed to pull this off. And I think everyone can do this if you really feel passionate for this. All right, and then, like I said, we did this. We raised 1 million by 17,000 subscribers. So comparable with DeCorrespondent. And then afterwards, we were in those 180 days where we had to fulfill the promise and come up with a project. And that's how it looks like now. And when we go back to this thing here, we were not in the situation, for several reasons, to have this level of planning. And like I said before, nowadays it's all about assumptions and testing assumptions, and sometimes you find out that assumptions are not true anymore. But when it comes to this slide, we thought we might test it wrong. But this is still so true when it comes to our experience. So we didn't have 90 days of planning. We didn't have 60 days of pre-promotion. We had 30 days of campaigning, yes. And afterwards, we didn't have 180 days. So we had around 1 month of planning. But we at no point really had a closed team because we were working with a lot of freelancers. It was a huge problem to get everyone on the table. So it was really hard to make progress when it comes to the editorial concept, to the concept of the whole thing. We didn't have 60 days of pre-promotion. We maybe had 1 month of pre-promotion. And afterwards, we had not 6 months, but 3 months of actually fulfilling the promise and developing the product. And yeah, that's a huge problem that you see on many levels. For example, the software, we developed it ourselves, and that might work very well. For example, DeCorrespondent also developed their own software, and it works phenomenally for them. But I mean, 3 months in software development is just not enough, and that's something that we really felt. So we were publishing a software product that was really good for 3 months of work, but that's not what the people expect and have in mind. They don't have in mind like this is okay for 3 months. They just expect that it's really good. However long you worked on that, they gave you money. You said you're gonna launch in October, and whatever you launch, that should be really good because that's what they paid for. So that was a problem, and up to today, it is a problem that we didn't have this planning phase. Also, when it comes to the editorial concept, like it really would have taken us at least another month to have an agreement on what's the mission, what's actually what we want to achieve as a group, not as individuals. So we never really developed this kind of like group feeling that we all have the same mission and the same vision, and we all know why we give 120%. I'm going to come to that in a minute. So now we are 6 months on the market. We published more than 500 stories. The stories that we publish, we want to focus on long reads. So the kind of promise that we gave is we are totally ad-free, we're totally independent, and we enable all the journalists to take as long for the stories as they need and to publish them in a length that they feel adequate for. Because that's what we basically analyzed as a huge problem in journalism at the moment. That first of all, the ad dependency is really impacting on your product in many ways and impacting negatively on your product. The next thing is that I'm afraid a lot of you will notice and know from your own life and professional life is that you just don't have the time to do the stories that you really love and can't work as long as you wish. And that were the two things that we really want to change. We wanted to be totally independent from all ads. Obviously, we would be totally dependent on our crowd. It's not that we're totally independent in every respect. And the other thing is that everyone who worked for us, they all had to be experts in the field, and they really had this privilege to work as long as the story demands. And we would publish the stories as long as it was necessary and the authors wanted them to be. We have by now over 18,000 paying subscribers. We have around 30 contributors, and we developed a proprietary CMS, which is a great thing if it works very well, and is a big problem if it doesn't. But the CMS is a problem anyway. Like, I mean, the ideal way is that you develop something that works perfectly, but that's very, very unlikely. And in any other case, if you use like something that's out there in the market space already, or if you do it yourself and it's just not perfect, you will encounter problems. Even if you use WordPress, it's just like it never works exactly how you want it to be. That's just like how CMSs work. One thing that we did differently from DeCorrespondent is a freemium model, so everyone can go on Krautreporter and access the content for free. So that's that. Then the learnings. Something that I found a lot of journalists had a problem with and still have a problem is that you perceive yourself so you really are humble in your position, and you really perceive yourself as a service provider towards your customer, and your customer is not your peer group, it's not yourself, it's the audience. And the reason, I'm not a psychologist, I don't know for sure why that is, but one explanation is that journalists, like good journalists, they're very critical people, and they have to be very critical, and they have to be like very confrontative when they interview like politicians and such like. They can't like approach a politician in a kind of like service provider mindset. But it really is, it's very destructive when it comes to developing a project, like a product for customers. You really have to step away from that mindset and be radical about this service provider mentality. Like, it's not about you, it's not about the journalists and the peer group, it's not about the filter bubble, it's about the people who you make this for and who are paying you. And that sounds very trivial, but it really, it's a huge change of mindset. And we were struggling with it, a lot of journalists are struggling with it, that's just a fact. We can just work on that. What also didn't really work well is relying on freelancers. So, like I said in the beginning, we didn't really, unlike the Correspondent, we didn't have a fixed kind of staff in a newsroom, but we had experts, like some of the most famous journalists in Germany, but they were freelancers. So they said that they would produce a certain amount of content every month, but it ended up that they didn't, because I mean, all freelancers, especially the real good ones, they get a lot of job offers, and that was the same problem with us as well. They just got like a lot of job offers, and things happened, like some things in private life, vacation, whatever. But it's just not that level of commitment that you need to really kick off a project in the first 6 months. You really want to have people that are there in the newsroom every day, that feel really committed to make this a success, and to also feel properly involved in what's going on. I mean, that's also something that where I see it was a problem for them, that we used a tool that I can highly recommend. It's called Slack, for basically chatting in a team. But obviously, that's not really a replacement for being in the newsroom, for like talking to each other. So they also felt like not being on par with what's going on every day. And that's something that we changed, and I would recommend doing that from the beginning. Now we work more closely with a smaller group of people, but they really come in the office every day, and that totally changed the whole corporate culture and makes the work way better. Yeah, plan carefully, like I said before. Crowdfunding comes with a lot of strings attached. Like I said also before, you just have to be aware that this whole communication with the crowd is just extremely tiring. And that's also something that you should keep in mind when it comes to setting up your team. They have, in our case, we were 3 people just dealing with the crowd and doing this whole community management. I don't know if you need 3 people, but there need to be at least 1 person doing nothing else, because you really don't want to let your crowd wait for days when they have a question, because you have to be aware they enabled you to do this, and that's what I mean with the service provider mentality. At the latest, when the next year you try to get money again through crowdfunding, you want to have the reputation that you really take care of your crowd and you hold them dear. And so this reputation is really, really important. And yeah, and providing a convincing vision and roadmap obviously is also something that's extremely important, and that, because we didn't have that much time, couldn't really work on as long as we needed to. And I think that's really crucial, and that's crucial for the campaign. It's crucial after the campaign. It's crucial at any point. It's crucial when you ask people. You really want to tell everyone that you talk to, if it's like fellow colleagues, if it's the press, if it's the crowd, in 1 or 2 sentences, why they need you, why this is important, why they should care, and why this is like no one else can provide what you are providing. If you want to read on Krautreporter on English, like most of the coverage is in German, but there's one article by Ken Doctor. If you search for Newsonomics in Krautreporter, you will find it, and that gives you also some kind of deeper look into the campaign and the numbers. Yeah. So what I found really exciting is that what started with Spot Us like in 2008, then was continued in 2013 with DeCorrespondent, and then what we kind of followed up on in 2014 with Krautreporter really seemed to enable a huge movement that is really just kicking off right now. So El Español, a Spanish alternative news outlet, they set the new record and raised 3.6 million. I don't know. I think it was March, but I'm, to be honest, not 100% sure. But it was this year. What they did differently is that they did crowd investing. So the difference between crowdfunding and crowd investing is crowdfunding. You either don't give your members anything, or you give them a product, or you give them some special rights. And Krautreporter, for example, everyone who donated for us, they got some extra privileges. So no one can comment but our members. When we do events, only our members, only the people who paid can access them for free. So that are kind of like bonuses that people get. When it comes to crowd investing, you don't get this kind of like products or benefits, but you get an actual share in the company. And that's what they did, and that seems to work really, really well. I mean, 3.6 million is quite remarkable. In August last year, there was Contributoria was launched. That's a spin-off by The Guardian. So The Guardian started it, but then it was so successful that it actually became its own entity. the idea here is that the crowd can suggest stuff to work on, and then if those projects, so it's just a pitch, and then if the pitch is actually attracting enough or it reaches the goal, the funding goal, the reporter is actually gonna do the story. Also works very well. In December last year, also Correctiv, that's the German ProPublica, they started their own crowdfunding for journalism platform. They basically work like the old Krautreporter, so journalists can pitch their kind of projects, and then the community can decide what they want to fund or not. Then, like I said, in February, the founder actually is here, so if you want to go a bit more carefully, a bit more, get more in-depth knowledge and insights into this whole project, just ask him. I think this is one of the most inspiring projects that we saw lately, because, like I said, I mean, in Hungary, like starting your own independent newsroom and media project, also with a focus on investigative reporting. I mean, in an environment like Hungary, I think that's amazing, and it's even more amazing that they found enough people who believed in this idea, made it possible, and now they can really do critical, independent media coverage in an environment that otherwise wouldn't really provide for that anymore. Then there are also lesser known and smaller examples, like Stundin, that's an Icelandic project. They also want to be an alternative to news media. They got funded successfully. The Blank Spot project got 120,000 euros. It's a Swedish project, also successfully funded. And the shift that happened here, and I said that before, and I want to emphasize it now, is these are not any longer small projects. These are like full outgrown alternatives to the existing media landscape. It's not about just funding a research or a trip or whatever. It's really enabling a whole newsroom to operate for like a long time, to really establish a new news brand. And I think that it's amazing that this works, not only works, but actually works better than those smaller projects. So think big, I think, really helps when it comes to crowdfunding. And then in April or in May, we're not sure if it actually works out in April, we want to relaunch Krautreporter, the crowdfunding platform. We're going to change the name because Krautreporter now is more associated with the magazine. And the next reason why we changed the name is because we really want to make it international now. So we want to be a service provider for international crowdfunding projects and really add to this European movement of crowdfunding that we see at the moment. And we had the first kind of project was actually Direct 36. So we were providing the software for this crowdfunding project, and we would be happy and are really looking forward to other partners. So we can see more of this kind of like add to this movement, keep the momentum, and just provide more alternatives to the media that's out there already, and that's dysfunctional to a huge extent. Okay, we only have like 3 more minutes, so I'm afraid I can't really go into the whole audience engagement and development topic. We did a lot of things differently when it comes to working with our crowd. For example, we really take care of a newsletter. The newsletter is actually one of our best products. It's used by over 13,000 people. The opening rate is like around 50%, which is for newsletters like phenomenal. And what we really achieved is that we became a regular, like basically became the first touch point in terms of media consumption for a lot of people. So a lot of people start their day now with our newsletter, and the reason for that is because the guy who's writing it is called Christian Fahrenbach. He's not writing a corporate toned newsletter, but he's really like shining through his personality. It's really, you can read in every line that it's like this guy in New York that you funded, you made it happen, that this guy can write for you, and he's really grateful for that. And he's now every day with a lot of fun and motivation, and just he just loves what he's doing, and you can really read that in every line, and that's working very well. And what we do here is we only, in the last bottom, we are actually promoting our articles. The main thing here is that we just want to enable everyone to be part, like to just know what's going on in the world. So he's just like summarizing the 3 major news topics for you in a really entertaining way, linking out to more in-depth long reads if you want to do that. So after 5 minutes of this newsletter, you really know what are kind of the major things in the news. And I think that's also something that, why I'm emphasizing that so much, is because nowadays we hear a lot about the importance of news streams and all this kind of stuff. Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah. What I found, and I think a lot of people find that, is that the main news stream is the inbox nowadays. So really try to perceive the inbox as the most important news stream to get in touch with your audience. I mean, Facebook is great, Twitter is great, but they all come with huge drawbacks. The inbox, like establishing a real close connection via a newsletter, is the most direct connection you can have. And it's the best way to get in touch with your audience, because there's not all this noise around it like you have on all the other social platforms. All right, and then the last thing, like there are actually really a lot of things that I would love to talk to you about, the whole approach of communicating with the crowd. But just one example, because that's working phenomenally, that's a game changer for me, and I hope you can implement that as well, because it's very beneficial. We asked every new member 5 questions when they register. What did they study? What's their field of expertise? Where are they living? Where do they have people that they could contact in which countries? And every time we have a huge research now, we can ask our database and not just like ask all the crowd, because that usually doesn't work, because you get like a lot of noise back. But for example, we did something on the milk kind of economy. And I mean, that's very, very niche-y. And we didn't really think that we would find anyone in our database. But actually, it turned out 7 people really said that they're experts when it comes to the milk industry. And those 7 people we addressed, we wrote to them, and the knowledge that they provided us, that's the really helpful knowledge. And they, on the other hand, have this feeling like, wow, like I'm not asked because, like, I don't know, they ask everyone, but they really care about me, and they care about what I can add to this product. So it's a meaningful kind of conversation that happens here. And that's a huge success, and I think everyone can do this, and I think everyone should do this. Not just like try to engage like the huge mass all the time. That's important as well, but really think about how can you actually get into a meaningful conversation with a small part that can really help you, and that really like feels better if they know why you are actually contacting them. Okay. Then maybe do we have time for 2 or 3 questions? Okay. Yeah, any questions? We have 2 or 3 questions.
Thank you, that was a great presentation. I'm just curious about where what your thought is about if you started to map the enthusiasm and the early adoption of crowdfunding, where it's going to plateau, which it inevitably will, and how much is too much. Because just in Canada, where I live, last week, and I write for an online journal, we raised $75,000 kind of very quickly.
Congrats.
Yeah, and it wasn't a classic crowdfunding thing, and we had the advantage of everyone thinking that if they didn't finish the 75, it wouldn't fund. But in fact, we never set it up that way. And if we only got 60,000, we were going to keep the 60,000. And it was not deceitful. It's just the way people now have this mentality that you have to reach a goal or you lose the whole thing. So we benefit from that. But at the same time, we were doing that, and that was to cover the federal election, which is coming up in Canada. A competitor raised $50,000 to cover the federal election, and a blog site which is covering climate change raised another $25,000 or so. This is all in one area too, on the west coast of Canada. So I think that's great on the one hand. I also worry how much you can continue to do that before people are going to go, well, hang on, I already gave to those people, or I've given to those people, I've given to you twice. So where does it saturate?
That's a tricky question. I'm afraid I don't really have an answer. At the moment, to be frank, I don't really worry about that, because I just think the market will sort of sort it out. I think there's still a lot of way to grow. Like I think this whole crowdfunding market still can grow plentyfold. Of course, there is a limit, but at the moment, yeah, that's not something that is worrying for me, because I mean, on the one hand, we see that a lot of people they invest a lot of money in all sorts of crowdfunding, not only journalism but also Kickstarter and all sorts of things. So there are new markets kind of like popping up, and they are growing to some extent, and then they're plateauing. But I don't know where to put this plateau, because what we see on the other hand is that a lot of markets are shrinking. Like, I mean, we all give way less money for music. We give way less money for videos and stuff like that. So I think it's crowdfunding is part of a whole shift of our economy, where like old industries are just like having smaller and smaller margins. We invest less and less money, and then there's this new field that is just at its beginning and is growing at the moment, because it's exciting. It's new and exciting. I don't know how long it will stay that, but I don't think we should really worry about it, or actually should like promote a plateau, or like tell the people like don't invest more. I think you invested enough now, because if it enables independent journalism, I mean, we can't have enough independent journalism, especially not in times like ours.
I was really interested in what you say about the problems of relying on freelancers, and the fact it may have impacted how you developed your vision and having a clear mission in the beginning. Do you think there's a correlation between that and getting into like the Valley of Death? You said you started early, it happened on day 4. And then what's the tipping point that gets you into week 4? Because I know people who followed the campaign told me, people were saying they're not getting it funded, and then suddenly, boom. And all those people who said that, they joined in the last minute. So,
what was the connection with the freelancers?
The fact that like you relied so heavily on big name freelancers in the beginning meant that it's hard to develop a clear vision.
Yeah.
So did that have an impact on your crowdfunding?
Yeah, I think it did, because because we wanted to get everyone involved and get everyone agree on the big vision. We ended up not having this clear vision, because you just can't have that in this short amount of time, involving that many people. I mean, we had a vision, like we had a very clear narrative when it comes to the damage that ad-dependent journalism has, and our alternative to that. But I think it could have been stronger if we were a smaller team that were all like really agreeing 120% on what we're doing here, and we didn't do that. But I don't think it impacted that much on the momentum of this campaign. I think that's really something that you see all the time, that it's extremely hard to make people pay, extremely hard, and you really have to work like 4 weeks to actually do that. And I think one of the reasons, for sure not the biggest, but one of the reasons in our case was that we just became, I mean, we didn't publish anything at this point, but we just became this huge topic because we were basically the hope of all the freelancers out there. And in that case, actually, it helped that we worked with freelancers, because that was the kind of like where a lot of freelancers could see themselves in the project. And that just, they felt that they are already part of it, if they paid or if they didn't pay, because they were just involved in the coverage. And then when the people are thinking, like, now I was part of that story, and I don't want the story to end now. And that's the moment where they pay, and that's the very last moment. Okay, thanks a lot. Two more things off the record to kick off the conversation afterwards. I'm happy to talk to you about a lot of things. I stay around and give you tips on crowdfunding and crowd investing. I also I started a startup before and went to Silicon Valley and can give you some insights on, if you want to do your own startup and go to Silicon Valley, how to do business there. I can give you some tips on audience engagement. We didn't have time for that. And also, I'm involved in a new project called Toriel that helps you publish your portfolio, all your work online. We already did that in Germany and kind of like became like a common tool, a kind of LinkedIn for journalists. And we now have an English version. So yeah, if it's interesting for you to showcase your work, you can just come to us or to Markus, who is the CEO of Toriel, and yeah, we can help you with that. Thanks for listening.